Hello, my name's Samantha Backman. I want to tell you what happened to me in my life that's made such a huge change that it's not funny. So we're talking about 24 hours of change. I tell you what, the change in my life happened in about that time. Everything that I'd ever written on my to-do list seemed to go very, very slow in life. I found somebody who told me something that actually changed my life in about 24 seconds. I was on a plane. I went from India, where I manufacture menstruation products and work with vaginal hygiene in India, talking on menses and all that sort of thing. Anyway, I ended up at this seminar in LA, and the seminar was called Hub, Humanity Unites Brilliance. When I walked in the back of the room, a man was standing on stage by the name of Mark Victor Hansen. You may know him as the author of The 1 Minute Millionaire or Chicken Soup for the Soul books, etc., etc. Anyway, I walked into the back of the room and he saw me and he said, "Oh my God, we've got the vagina doctor walk in." So of course 750 heads turned around and thought, well, what does a vagina doctor look like? Anyway, he said, "Come and say a few words, Sam." So while I was walking through the room, he started to talk about what I was doing with education of women in third world. And one of the problems which we don't face in Western world, but because of these people tend to squat to go to the toilet, what happens is it's easier to wipe from the rectum to the vagina than what it is to wipe the proper way from the vagina to the rectum. Don't know if I'm going to get away with saying this, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's the truth. So anyway, I work in villages with this type of education. So Mark's telling the story as I'm walking through the crowd. Finally, I get up next to him and he's got his arm around me, and with an introduction like that, what do you say? And I said, well, look, that's a great introduction and we're talking about vaginas, but let me tell you, after 4 children, mine looks like a Subway with the lot. Anyway, Mark he's got his arm around me. He said, "I forgot to tell you, this woman's a comedian too." Anyway, hold that story. So I stood on stage and, put a bit of humour on the whole thing, because honestly, it's a really, really serious subject. So, but adding a bit of humour makes people laugh, but it makes them think too. Anyway, with that, a young boy came up to me and he said, "Hi, Sam, I know you." And I said, "No, I don't know you." Anyway, we're talking, and I couldn't figure out where I knew him from. The next day, I went to a seminar called XL, Extraordinary Lives, and this same boy was in the room, and I thought, he's from XL, that's where he knows me. At that stage, I was one of the nominees for Entrepreneur of the Year. He'd read my story, etc., etc., because I'm still working out how he seems to know me so well. Anyway, as the day went on, I realised, no, he wasn't an XL member, he'd just been invited there, and I actually didn't know him at all. Keep that story there. Day after, while I'm still in America, because I'd gone for this humanitarian seminar, a TV station asked me to come and do an interview on, it's called Manifesto, how we manifest great stuff in our life. Anyway, they said, look at the camera, tell us about yourself, and we'll take it from there. Cutting the story really short, at the end of that, they called me in the office and they said, "You're Australian humour. We think you're going to get away with murder," which I do, let me tell you. I mean, I've said lots of words that they won't let you get away with in some places, but being a comedian, hey, I didn't really do it. Anyway, they then said to me, "If you come in the studio tomorrow, let's do some interviews with some people and see what we've got." Again, this wasn't on my to-do list. So I've walked out of there going, oh my God, who am I going to ring? Mark Victor Hansen, he's a friend, I'll ring him. Don Tolman, the Indiana Jones of natural eating, one of my favourite Americans, ring him. And I thought, Corey, this guy who'd come up and said, I know you, and yet it didn't appear that we actually did know each other. So anyway, I ring him and his flatmate said, "Look, come over, he's having a run along the beach right now, he'll be back in a minute and we can talk." So anyway, I go over there, turns out Corey still wasn't home, so he had no idea why I was going over there. Anyway, sat down. Next thing, Corey walks in. He said, "Hello, Samantha, how are you?" I said, "Great." I said, "Listen, Corey, I've got something to ask you, and I know this is going to come as a surprise, but what you don't know, you've met me as the vagina doctor talking on vaginal hygiene, standing on platform with Mark Victor Hansen, and you've seen me at an XL seminar doing a talk on bloody brilliant lives." That's actually a long story about the bloody brilliant thing. We'll come back to that. So anyway, I sit down and I said, "I've got the opportunity maybe to get my own TV show. Can I interview you?" He said, "Oh my God." I said, "Oh my God, what?" He said, "That's where I know you." I said, "What do you mean that's where you know me?" He said, "Samantha, it's already happened. I've seen it in the future." I said, "Have you got a beer?" So with that, he started to tell me the story that at the age of 10, he was involved in such a bad car accident that from 10 to 15, he was in a coma. From 15 to 21, he was obviously out of the coma, but completely dysfunctional. This guy would see things, be high and low. In fact, he was suicidal more than not. Anyway, at 21, he looked in front of him, kind of a bit like that, and what he saw was a dead person. In fact, it was his grandfather, and the more he looked around, the more he saw. And he explained it like looking at a 3D picture where you look at the picture and you don't see anything, but you adjust your eyes back here and you do. Anyway, they put him in hospital and they found out that a chemical is released from the pituitary gland when you're dying that puts you into a euphoric state when you're dying. In other words, say you cross over peacefully instead of going, oh my God, I'm dying. So anyway, he crossed over and he saw dead people. The short of the story is that he crosses over 2 to 5 hours at a time, 4 or 5 times a week. In fact, the longest is 4 hours. After that, I sat with that kid for some time and he told me my life had already been chosen for me. In fact, I was a messenger and I was going to make a difference to third world women. So with that, forget the business plan, follow your heart, because it seems that the best things that can happen to you have already happened. And I think that's bloody brilliant.